Commander Daniel Pierce stood near the large window of the Earth Defense Station horizon and looked at his home planet below. The blue and white sphere turned slowly in the darkness of space. 27 years had passed since humans first met the Valkyran Collective. 27 long years of talking and making deals and trying to be friends with aliens who seemed to hate everything about humanity. 27 years of accepting insults and unfair trade, agreements and watching the Valkyran push humans around. Like they were nothing, all of that was about to change forever. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez walked up to him with her datapad in hand. Her face looked tight and angry. She spoke in a voice that shook just a little. "The attack on Colony 7 has been confirmed, sir. We got the final reports from Geneva. No survivors at all. 300,000 people are dead." Daniel closed his eyes and felt his chest tighten. Colony 7 was a farming world where families went to live simple, quiet lives. There were schools there and parks and little houses with gardens. Children played in the fields. Teachers taught in classrooms. Artists painted the alien sunsets. None of those people had weapons. None of them were soldiers. They were just trying to live their lives in peace. "The Valkyran are saying it was a military base," Sophie continued as she read from her pad. "They claim we fired on them first and they had to defend themselves." Daniel opened his eyes and stared out at Earth again. "We did not even have guns on that planet," he said quietly. "There were no weapons platforms and no defense systems, and everyone knew it." He turned around and looked at Sophie. "Get me Admiral Catherine Wells right now. It is time." The hologram appeared in front of them, showing Admiral Wells on the bridge of her ship. The ship was called the UESS Vengeance, and it was the biggest and most powerful vessel humanity had ever built. Behind the Admiral, Daniel could see crew members moving around and working at their stations. Everyone looked busy and focused. Daniel Catherine said, using his first name. "I guess you heard about what happened." Colony 7, Daniel said. "Yes, I heard. 300,000 innocent people murdered in cold blood. Admiral, what did the Council decide?" Catherine looked at him with hard eyes. "The vote was unanimous, Daniel. After Colony 7 and after they poisoned the water on New Terra, and after they destroyed our medical ships going to Kepler Station, the United Earth, government has authorized Protocol Midnight, Protocol Midnight." Those two words hung in the air like a death sentence. For more than 20 years, humanity had been building a secret military force. They built shipyards hidden in asteroid fields where no one could see them. They tested new weapons in the dark, empty spaces between stars where alien sensors could not reach. They trained soldiers in underground bases on distant moons. The Valkyran thought humans were weak and peaceful. The Valkyran thought humans cared more about art and music than fighting. The Valkyran thought humans would never fight back no matter how much they were pushed. The Valkyran were wrong. "How long until we are ready to strike?" Daniel asked. "The fleet is already moving into attack positions," Catherine said. "Every ship we built in secret and every weapon we stockpiled is ready to go. The Valkyran have 12 main worlds and 47 colony planets. In 72 hours they will have nothing left." Daniel felt a cold chill run down his back. He had trained for war his whole adult life, but thinking about what was coming made him feel strange inside. "Are we really going to wipe them out completely?" he asked. "Total destruction of their entire civilization?" Catherine's face got even harder. "They had their chance, Daniel. They had 27 years of chances. We offered them peace and trade and friendship. We tried to show them that we could be good neighbors and allies. They responded by lying and cheating and killing our people." Her voice got colder. "They wanted to see what humanity does when we get pushed too far. Now they are going to find out, and they will never forget it. All across Earth and on every human colony, the same thing was happening right now. Reserve soldiers were being called up to active duty. Hidden weapons caches were being opened for the first time in years. Ships that looked like cargo haulers and mining vessels were shedding their fake outer hulls to show the warships underneath. Every one of those ships was covered in weapons that violated every treaty humanity had signed with the Valkyran. But treaties did not matter anymore. Peace did not matter anymore. The only thing that mattered now was making the Valkyran pay for what they had done. Later that night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters reading the message that would be sent to the Valkyran in 2 days. The Council had written it, and every nation on Earth had approved it. It had been translated into every alien language that humans knew. To the Valkyran Collective, this message read, "For 27 years, humanity extended the hand of friendship to you. You took that hand and covered it in the blood of our innocent people. You mistook our patience for weakness. You thought our diplomacy meant we were cowards. You believed our hope for peace made us fools. This message is our final communication with your kind. We tried peace with everything we had. You chose war instead. Now you will witness our vengeance, and it will be terrible. There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender accepted. There will be no mercy shown. You taught us that the universe respects only strength and violence. Thank you for teaching us that lesson. Humanity will make sure you never forget what happens when you teach us something. Daniel read those words 3 times. He thought about how this would change everything forever. When this war was over, humanity would be different. They would be feared across the galaxy. Every alien species would know humans not as peaceful explorers, but as the race that destroyed an entire civilization in less than a week. People would tell stories about what happened to the Valkyrin, and parents would use those stories to scare their children into behaving. But then Daniel thought about Colony 7 again. He thought about the children who would never grow up now. He thought about families torn apart and dreams destroyed. He thought about 300,000 people who died for no reason, except that the Valkyrin wanted to prove they were stronger than humans. When he thought about all of that, Daniel found he could accept what was coming. He could live with being feared if it meant no one would ever do something like Colony 7 again. The Valkyrin had made their choice when they decided to murder innocent people. Now humanity would make them pay for that choice. Now the Valkyrin would learn that some species should never be pushed too far. Now the whole galaxy would learn what happened when you made humanity angry enough to stop talking and start fighting. Daniel turned off the lights in his quarters and lay down in his bunk, but he did not sleep much that night. None of them did. The broadcast went out at exactly the planned moment on every frequency that existed. It went through every communication network in known space. It bypassed Valkyrin security systems like they were not even there. It overrode emergency channels. It appeared on every screen from the core worlds to the furthest colonies in the darkness. High Executor Voshitar was sitting in a council meeting when every display in the chamber flickered and died. Then a human face filled every screen. It was a woman with gray hair and eyes that looked like frozen steel, Admiral Catherine Wells. To the Valkyrin Collective and all who are watching this transmission, she began, and her voice was steady and cold as death. I am Admiral Catherine Wells of the United Earth Space Force. This is humanity's final message to you. Voshtar felt his 3 hearts begin to beat faster and faster. The human military? The humans barely had a military worth mentioning. This had to be some kind of trick or bluff. For 27 years, humanity has pursued peace with your civilization, Catherine continued. We have negotiated in good faith. We have honored every agreement. We have extended friendship despite countless acts of aggression from you. You have responded to our goodwill with sabotage and treachery and murder. The screen split into multiple images that made Voshitar's blood turn cold. Colony 7 burning with bodies in the streets. New Terra's water treatment plants poisoned with chemicals. The medical transport ship destroyed in space, killing 200 doctors and nurses who were going to help sick people on Kepler Station. You believed humanity to be weak, Catherine said, and now there was something terrible in her voice. You mistook our patience for cowardice. You thought our diplomacy meant we could not fight. You believed our hope for peace made us stupid and naive. You were wrong about everything. The display changed to show something that made Voshitar jump out of his seat. Ships. Hundreds of human warships. They were sleek and deadly looking and completely different from anything the intelligence reports had described. Weapons platforms. Defense grids. An arsenal that should have taken centuries to build. While we talked of peace, we prepared for war, Catherine continued. While we signed your treaties, we built our fleets in secret. While we smiled and shook your appendages, we aimed our weapons at your hearts. You taught us a valuable lesson about the universe. You taught us that it respects only strength. Thank you for that lesson. We will never forget it. Around the council chamber, other Valkyrin were standing up and shouting. On the tactical displays, new contacts were appearing everywhere. Human ships were dropping their stealth fields throughout Valkyrin space. They had been hiding there all along, waiting, watching, getting ready. This is our final communication, Catherine said, and her voice carried the weight of judgment. We tried peace. You chose war. Now you will witness our vengeance. There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy. What you have sown in blood, you will reap in extinction." The screen went black. For 3 seconds, complete silence filled the council chamber. Then every alarm in the building started screaming at once. On the bridge of the UESS Vengeance, Admiral Catherine Wells allowed herself 1 moment of silence after the broadcast ended. Then she turned to her weapons officer, Commander Jake Phillips. "You may fire when ready." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said, and his hands moved across his control panel with perfect precision. "All ships commence Operation Hammerfall. Authorization code Valkyrie 97. Execute." Across Valkyrie space, humanity struck like lightning. Commander Daniel Pierce watched his tactical display as his fleet opened fire on the Valkyrie homeworld defense grid. The Silent Strike's railguns accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. Each shot was calculated down to the millimeter. Each shot was devastating. "Direct hit on defense platform Alpha 7, Sophie reported. Platform destroyed completely. Targeting platform Alpha 8 now." The Valkyrie defenders were trying to scramble their ships and get into fighting positions, but they were too slow. They were too unprepared. For every Valkyrie vessel that launched, 3 human ships were already waiting in perfect firing positions. "Incoming transmission from the surface," Ryan Foster called out. "They are trying to ask for terms of surrender." "Ignore it," Daniel said without emotion. "All ships continue firing. Primary targets are defense platforms, orbital shipyards, and communication satellites. I want them all reduced to debris." On the surface of the Valkyrie homeworld, panic spread through the cities like wildfire. People who had lived in safety for thousands of years watched as their orbital defenses died one by one. Bright flowers of fire bloomed in the darkness above them. The shield that had always protected them was being torn apart in minutes. Captain Lisa Morrison guided the shadow through a debris field that had been a Valkyrie battle group just moments before. The enemy ships had died so quickly they barely got off any shots in return. Human stealth technology was decades ahead of anything the Valkyrie had. The fleet had positioned itself perfectly before striking. "Ma'am, we are detecting a Valkyrie dreadnought trying to run away from the system," Ben Harris reported. "Should we pursue and destroy it?" "Let it go," Lisa said. "Admiral Wells wants some survivors. Someone has to tell the rest of the galaxy what happened here today." The battle, if anyone could call it that, lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Valkyrie homeworld's orbital defenses no longer existed. Every military installation in the system had been reduced to scrap metal floating in space. The planet itself was untouched, but now it was completely helpless and naked before the human fleet. Admiral Wells appeared on Daniel's communication screen. "Commander Pierce, you are to proceed to the Valkyrie colony worlds. Execute the same protocol. Complete military destruction but spare civilian targets. I want them alive to remember this day." "Understood," Admiral Daniel replied. "What about the home world?" "We will maintain blockade," Catherine said. "No ships in or out. Let them think about what they have done while we finish with the rest of their territory." Across the Valkyrie collective, the same scene repeated over and over. Human fleets emerged from stealth. They struck with devastating precision. Then they vanished again. Colony defense forces that had seemed powerful just days ago were swept aside like dust in a storm. The Valkyrie military was unprepared for an enemy that fought like this. They crumbled everywhere. In the Geneva War Room, President Nathan Clark watched reports flood in from every front. Victory after victory. The Valkyrie were being systematically dismantled as a military power. Humanity had suffered fewer than 200 casualties total. "How long until they have nothing left?" he asked. "At this pace, 72 hours, General Victor Hayes answered. "The Valkyrie are retreating on every front. Some colonies are already trying to surrender to us." "No surrender," Nathan said quietly. "Not until every weapon they have is slag and debris. Not until they understand completely what they have unleashed." The message had been sent. The vengeance had begun, and the galaxy was learning a new truth about humanity. The species that sang songs about peace and love. The species that wrote poetry and painted beautiful art. The species that had seemed so gentle and kind. Those same humans, when pushed too far, were capable of a wrath that could shake the very stars themselves. The Valkyrin had wanted to see what humanity would do when they stopped being patient. Now they were finding out, and the lesson was written in fire across their burning worlds. The Valkyrin colony of Treshmar had been established 400 years ago. It was a thriving world full of factories and universities and beautiful architecture. Its orbital defense platforms had been the pride of their military. State-of-the-art systems that supposedly could stop any attack. The word supposedly was very important. Captain Lisa Morrison looked at her tactical display as the Shadow approached the system in complete stealth. "We are reading 72 defense platforms, 15 patrol frigates and 1 heavy cruiser in high orbit," Ben Harris reported. "They are on high alert, but they still cannot see us at all." "Good," Lisa said. "Coordinate with the rest of the fleet. I want simultaneous strikes on every single platform. The cruiser is priority 1. Once their big gun is gone, this will be over very quickly." 8 human ships hung invisible in the darkness around Treshmar. Their crews watched and waited for the signal. Lisa thought about the Valkyrin civilians on the planet below going about their normal lives. They had no idea their military was about to be destroyed. She did not feel good about what was coming. But she remembered Colony 7 and the feeling passed like smoke. "All ships report ready," Ryan Foster announced from his station. "Awaiting your order, ma'am." Lisa took a deep breath. "Execute." The Shadow dropped its stealth field for exactly 2 seconds, just long enough to fire every weapon it had at the Valkyrin heavy cruiser. 8 other ships did the same thing at the exact same moment. The night sky above Treshmar lit up like a new sun as the cruiser's reactor exploded and breached. Then the real destruction began like a storm of fire. The defense platforms never had a chance. They were designed to fight enemies they could see. They were completely helpless against attackers who fired from stealth and moved before return fire could even be calculated. Within 6 minutes, 72 platforms became 72 clouds of debris expanding into space. The patrol frigates lasted a bit longer, but only because they tried to run away instead of fight. On the surface of Treshmar, millions of Valkyrians stared up at the sky in complete horror as their orbital defenses died. This was the 8th colony to fall in 3 days. The pattern was always exactly the same. Human ships appeared from nowhere. They destroyed everything military in the system. Then they withdrew, leaving the colony defenseless and terrified. Aboard the UESS Vengeance, Admiral Catherine Wells reviewed status reports from all fronts. Of the Valkyrin's 47 colonies, 31 had been neutralized. Their fleet that once numbered in the hundreds was down to fewer than 50 working ships. Most of them were running away as fast as they could. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Valkyrin High Council Commander Jake Phillips reported. They are asking, and I quote, 'What do you want from us?'" Catherine felt cold satisfaction. "Open a channel." The holographic display showed the Valkyrin Council chamber. High Executor Vashtar looked like he had aged decades in the past week. His confidence was completely gone. In its place was something that looked like desperation and fear. Admiral Wells Vashtar said through his translator, "Your point has been made. You have demonstrated your military capability beyond any doubt. What are your terms for ending this conflict?" Catherine leaned forward in her chair. "Terms? You think this is a negotiation? We are willing to make reparations for our actions against your colonies. We will pay compensation. We will provide resources. Anything you require. Just stop this attack." "Anything I require," Catherine repeated softly. "Tell me, High Executor, what resources would bring back the 300,000 people you murdered on Colony 7? What compensation equals the lives of the doctors and nurses you killed? What payment restores the children you poisoned on New Terra?" Vashtar opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You taught us that peace is a luxury for the strong," Catherine continued. "You demonstrated that mercy is weakness and that diplomacy is for fools. Very well. We learned your lesson. Now you get to live with the consequences, please," Vashtar said, and real fear filled his voice now. "We made mistakes. We were wrong about humanity. But surely you do not intend to exterminate us completely." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "No, we are not going to exterminate you. That would be too quick and too clean. Instead, we are going to do something much worse." Made a gesture, and the display changed, showing a document with the seal of the United Earth government on it. "These are the terms of your surrender, and they are not negotiable," Catherine said. "First, the Valkyrin Collective will immediately disarm. Every warship and every weapon and every military installation will be destroyed, or turned over to human control. Second, you will give up all colonies beyond your core worlds to a neutral coalition. Third, your government will dissolve and be replaced by a council that we will oversee. Fourth, you will pay reparations to the families of every human you killed. It will take your economy 200 years to pay it all. And fifth, every action you take as a species for the next century will be monitored and evaluated and approved by humanity. You are enslaving us, Voshitar whispered. No, Catherine said. We are teaching you. For the next 100 years you will learn what it means to be at the mercy of a stronger power. You will learn humility. You will learn restraint. You will learn that actions have real consequences. Maybe if you are very lucky and learn your lessons well, your great-grandchildren will be allowed to govern themselves again. And if we refuse? Catherine's smile was terrible to see. Then we finish what we started. We have destroyed your military. It would take us perhaps another week to destroy your infrastructure and your cities and your shipyards. We would leave you alive but broken and primitive and scattered across worlds without technology or hope. Is that what you want? The council chamber was completely silent. You have 6 hours to decide, Catherine said. Accept these terms or face total annihilation. There is no third option. There will be no further negotiation. 6 hours, High Executor. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Commander Daniel Pierce stood on the bridge of the Silent Strike watching the Valkyran homeworld below. In 4 days, humanity had done what seemed impossible. They had defeated an interstellar civilization, not through years of war, but through overwhelming force and perfect strategy and complete surprise. Sophie, are we receiving any signals from the other Valkyran worlds, he asked. 17. Colonies have already agreed to the surrender terms. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez replied. They are not even waiting for the High Council to decide. They just want this to stop. Daniel nodded slowly. The Valkyran had learned perhaps too well what it meant to face an enemy who fought without mercy. He wondered if humanity had learned the wrong lessons too. They had wanted to be explorers and diplomats and friends to the galaxy. Now they were conquerors. But then he thought of Colony 7 again, and he knew this had been necessary. Sometimes peace could only be built on a foundation of strength. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully was to hit back so hard they never stood up again. 6 hours, he said quietly. Let us see what they choose. Deep down, he already knew the answer. The Valkyran would surrender. They had absolutely no choice. And humanity would spend the next century making sure they never forgot the price of their arrogance. The galaxy was learning a new truth. Humanity would always try peace first. But if you forced them to war, they would show you horrors beyond imagination. 5 hours and 47 minutes after Admiral Wells gave her ultimatum, High Executor Voshitar appeared on every human communication channel. He looked completely broken. He was a shadow of the proud leader who had dismissed humanity as insignificant just weeks ago. On behalf of the Valkyran Collective, he said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. We accept your terms. Unconditional surrender. We will comply with all demands. In the Geneva War Room, President Nathan Clark let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Around him, the leaders of Earth's nations sat in silence. They were processing what they had accomplished and what it had cost them to do it. It is over, General Victor Hayes said quietly. We won, did we? Nathan asked as he looked at the tactical display showing human ships scattered across Valkyran space. Look at what we have become. Catherine Wells joined the conversation through a holographic link from the Vengeance. We became what we needed to become. The Valkyran made their choice. We simply responded to it. And now we are occupiers, Nathan said. Overlords. Everything we said we would never be. For 100 years, Catherine replied. Long enough to ensure this never happens again. Long enough for them to understand. Then we leave and give them back their freedom. Captain Lisa Morrison guided the shadow through the Valkyran homeworld's orbital space. It was eerily quiet now after all the chaos of the past week. Below her, the cities glowed in the darkness. Millions of Valkyran were going about their lives under the shadow of human warships above them. Ma'am, we are receiving requests from 17 Valkyran vessels asking permission to return to port, Ben Harris reported. What should I tell them? Grant permission, Lisa said. But maintain weapons lock on them until they are safely docked. We are peacekeepers now, not conquerors. We need to start acting like it. It was a strange transition to make. For days they had been warriors dealing death and destruction. Now suddenly they were being asked to be guardians and protectors. The people they were protecting were the same ones they had been fighting just hours ago. Over the next 3 weeks, the transition from war to occupation proceeded with surprising smoothness. Valkyran warships were systematically taken apart. Their weapons were removed and destroyed. Military bases were dismantled piece by piece. The Valkyran High Council dissolved as promised. A provisional government of Valkyran civilians was formed under human oversight. Commander Daniel Pierce found himself assigned to Oversight Station Gamma. It was a massive human installation built in orbit around one of the Valkyran core worlds. His job was no longer to fight but to monitor and ensure compliance and help guide the Valkyran toward a better future. It was much harder than warfare had been. "Commander, we have a situation," Lieutenant Sophie Martinez said one morning. "There is a Valkyran protest on the surface. They are demanding the withdrawal of all human forces." Daniel pulled up the video feed on his screen. Thousands of Valkyran were gathered in one of their major cities holding signs and chanting. The translation software turned their words into English. "Go home, humans. We do not need your protection." "They have short memories," Sophie muttered under her breath. "No," Daniel said slowly. "They are scared. Their entire civilization has been turned upside down. They are trying to grasp for control of anything they can." He thought for a moment. "Open a channel to the planetary governor." A Valkyran civilian named Treshkal appeared on the screen. He had been a teacher before the war. Now he was thrust into a position of authority in the new government he never asked for. "Governor," Daniel said, "the protesters. What are they really asking for?" Treshkal looked surprised by the question. "They want their dignity back, Commander. They want to feel like they are in control of their own world again." "Then let us give them some of it," Daniel said. "Tell them that human oversight will be reduced in their city. We will maintain a small presence, but day-to-day governance will be entirely Valkyran. If they can demonstrate responsible self-government for 6 months, we will expand the program to other cities." "You would trust us?" Treshkal asked, and he was clearly skeptical. "Trust is earned," Daniel replied. "But the opportunity to earn it has to be given first. We are not here to rule you forever, Governor. We are here to ensure you learn from your mistakes. The faster you learn, the faster we leave." It was a small step forward, but it was a beginning. 6 months later, Admiral Catherine Wells stood before the United Earth Assembly, giving her final report on the Valkyran situation. "The transition to peaceful oversight has exceeded all expectations," she said, reading from her prepared notes. "Valkyran compliance with disarmament terms is 100% complete. Their economy is stabilizing under the reparations framework we established. Most importantly, we are seeing the emergence of a new generation of Valkyran leadership that rejects the old militaristic policies completely." And the other species in the galaxy, Ambassador Helen Price asked. "How have they reacted to our actions?" Catherine pulled up a star map showing the positions of other alien civilizations throughout known space. Mixed responses. Some are terrified of us now. Others are approaching us for defensive pacts and alliances. The Gentari Federation has formally requested human protection for their border worlds. The Korthan Alliance wants to establish military exchanges with us, so we have become the galaxy's policemen," Helen said. "We have become what we had to become," Catherine replied. The Valkyran situation taught the galaxy an important lesson. Humanity will always prefer peace, but we are very, very good at war. That reputation, if we manage it properly, could actually prevent future conflicts. In his office on Earth, President Nathan Clark reviewed the same reports. The cost of the war had been remarkably light. Fewer than 300 human casualties total. The cost in terms of humanity's self-image was much harder to calculate and measure. But as he read the reports from the Valkyran worlds, he saw something encouraging. Reports of societies slowly rebuilding with human guidance. Reports of old militaristic attitudes being challenged by younger Valkyran who wanted something different. He began to think that maybe they had made the right choice after all. 10 years later, Commander Daniel Pierce, who was now Admiral Pierce, returned to the Valkyran homeworld for a ceremony. The Valkyran provisional government was being dissolved. It would be replaced by a fully elected civilian government. Human oversight would continue, but in a much smaller capacity. Governor Treshkal, who was now Prime Minister, stood beside him as they watched the ceremony together. "Your people taught us a hard lesson," Admiral Treshkal said quietly. "But perhaps it was one we needed to learn. War should always be the last resort," Daniel replied. "But when it becomes necessary, it must be fought without hesitation and without mercy. That is what we learned from you. And what we learned from you, Treshkal said, is that even in war there can be honor. You could have destroyed us completely. Instead you rebuilt us. That is a lesson we will not forget. That evening, Daniel stood on the observation deck looking down at the Valkyran homeworld. The scars of war were still visible, but new construction was everywhere. The planet was healing slowly but surely. He thought about the message that had started it all. We tried peace. Now you will witness our vengeance. The vengeance had been terrible and swift, but it had not been the end. Instead, it had been a beginning. The start of a new era where humanity's role in the galaxy was no longer that of the optimistic newcomer, but of the experienced power that knew when to extend friendship and when to show strength. 50 years after the war, the Valkyran petitioned for full restoration of their sovereignty. The human overseers, satisfied that the lessons had been truly learned, granted it. Relations between the two species, while never warm, were correct and peaceful. And across the galaxy, other species looked at humanity with new understanding. These were not conquerors by nature, but neither were they victims. They were something more complex. A species that genuinely wanted peace but was fully prepared for war. The message had been sent and received and understood. Humanity had tried peace. When that failed, they delivered vengeance. But in the end, they also delivered justice and guidance and the opportunity for redemption. It was a legacy the human race could live with.